and welcome to the Small Town Pastor Podcast. This is Ben Beckner. Thank you so much for listening and joining me on this journey. Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the Small Town Pastor Podcast. This is Ben Beckner. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. And it has been a good long time since we've been together, since I've taken some time to record and put together this podcast. And it's not because I haven't wanted to, but just kind of a weird season that we kind of find ourselves in, at least for me. And I've just found it really difficult to make some time to put this together. I know that when I originally set out to do this, I wanted it to be something that, just almost like an online journal in a lot of ways, where just process a lot of thoughts and reactions to things, stuff that happens throughout the week, things I'm discovering and learning, things I feel like I'm stumbling through or whatever, and just be able to kind of put this out there to help myself process through it. So over the last few months, this hasn't come together like I'd intended. And I was really kind of thinking about that here a lot the last several weeks. And kind of landed on a couple of different things. And one of them, actually out of Colossians chapter 1, was something that just really kind of hit me the other day. And I'll get to that here in just a minute. But I've just really kind of found myself during this time not feeling unmotivated to do things, but at the same time really feeling unmotivated to do things. Have all these desires of wanting to learn new things, to record this podcast, to studying up on things that I've always wanted to, I guess, learn more about or be better educated in. And just found myself over the last few months, like having that desire, but not really doing anything about it. So what's going on with some of the things happening in my own life right now, I've got two kids getting ready to go back to college, and two others that'll be going into high school. And I was talking with Megan the other night, and as she's getting ready to go to college, she's kind of processing a lot of things there as well. And in our conversation, it was just kind of a realization, at least for me in this season, that I'm finding myself in, is this conflict I feel going on within me. And we kind of talked about a couple of things, and one of those was that, when with the dynamic of the way things are right now with COVID, a lot of isolation, a lot of separation, a lot of just things are just odd, and not being able to connect with people the way that we normally have, and not spending time with others and in fellowship and all of those type of things. And I think in a lot of ways that has affected, at least for me, has affected the way that I am kind of perceiving things and the way that I am looking at life. And it's not that I've been depressed or anything like that. It's not that I've been overly discouraged, but I haven't been motivated to really do things. I haven't been motivated to better myself. I know I'm putting on a lot of weight, it seems like, just because I'm not, again, motivated to go exercise or be active. And it's just kind of a weird funk that I've kind of found myself in. And I think that that's spilled over into a lot of areas of my life. Physically, like I said, I haven't been real active, not eating well. And then I find it spilling over into other areas of my life where I'm not taking care of my, myself in other ways, as far as my intellect. I'm not reading things. I'm not spending time studying, just a lot of things that I found myself kind of getting lazy with. And I do know that when you, and well, at least for me, when I spend time with people that are encouraging or challenging, that motivates me to want to do more things and want to improve on myself. So I think with all of this isolation, that's affected my outlook on things. And as a leader, as a pastor, um, I cannot let that happen. You know, I'm responsible to lead and to lead well and to have God's perspective and have God's heart for the church and for His people, and that needs to carry forward in my own heart, my own mind. And so, allowing these areas to be lazy in, I guess, affects all of that. And so, as I was having that conversation with Megan, as I was getting ready, trying to get a sermon prepared, I found myself in Colossians, and I've been there a few different times over the last few weeks, but recently just felt like it was something that I needed to be preaching some messages out of. And one of those, it came out of the first chapter of Colossians, and the heading in this section is Paul's labor for the church. And I'm not wanting to preach a message here, but something that I know that God was stirring within me as I read through these verses, that I just want to share. It just helped me kind of process a little bit of this season in my life, and it helped me change some motivation and help myself to change my way of thinking on some things. And it created within me this sense of urgency. And so I want to read a couple of verses here to you. So Colossians chapter 1, beginning in verse 28, Paul says this: "We proclaim him, Christ, admonishing and teaching everyone with all wisdom, so that we may present everyone perfect in Christ. To this end I labor, struggling with all his energy, which so powerfully works in me." Verse 2, he says this: "I want you to know how much I am struggling for you and for those at Laodicea and for all who have not met me personally. My purpose is that they may be encouraged in heart and united in love, so that they may have the full riches of complete understanding, in order that they may know the mystery of God, namely Christ." And there was a few things in there that just really stood out to me and challenged me and encouraged me, and in a lot of ways, I guess, kind of helped me move from where I'm at currently to where I feel like God is directing me. And so one of the things I noticed was that Paul says that he is just struggling. How does he say this here? He's struggling with all his energy. And it just, that imagery kind of helped me think about the way that Paul desired to labor all the more, to have this sense of urgency, to be advancing the gospel even more. And this was a church he had never met, he didn't plant, but he was writing this letter to encourage him. They were dealing with a lot of different things, but one of the things he wanted them to know was that he was laboring, and wanted them to know that he was struggling with them and for them. And all of this struggling and this laboring was rooted in Christ, was rooted in the urgency that Christ had to advance his message. And Paul understood that and was motivated by it. And so as I was thinking about that, I just kind of felt convicted that I didn't have those same type of desires, that same motivation, that same sense of urgency, where I could say that I had been struggling in my heart and my spirit, that I'd been laboring, and not in the ways that really were bearing fruit and mattered. Just like many other pastors during this time of COVID, dealing with church closures, in-person gatherings being limited, all of those things, it wasn't that my workload went away. In fact, it was more things happening, more things going on and trying to keep up with. And and I found myself over a period of time just really um, kind of going through a routine in some respects, in that just trying to get content out and trying to deal with technology and trying to get things set up and just a lot of different things, but really um, it was not um, it was not doing the things that I was accustomed to doing, or things that I saw myself doing when I first took this job. Um, and when I answered this call to pastor this church. So, um, I had 4 Sundays in person with this congregation before we spent over 3 months uh, with just doing online services. And so I had more time online than in person, and that was a weird thing to wrestle with and pastor a new church and trying to get to know people. I spent a lot of time calling and getting to know people over the phone that way, praying for people, and that was great. And in fact, that was probably one of the great things that came out of this pandemic, was being able to connect with people intentionally, and not taking for granted that you see each other on a Sunday morning and you're going to see them next week, but making sure that we connected with one another throughout the week and in between times. So that was great. I felt like I was able to do things, not just managing programming and managing services, but really endeavoring to meet people and understand them and meet them where they are, and struggles didn't stop and anxieties didn't stop. None of those things stopped. So we still needed one another. We still needed to be praying for one another and encouraging one another. And so that was kind of one of the good things, I would say. Even trying to pastor a new church was getting to know people in a much different way. Um, you know, it seemed like they were getting a sense for who I was, but I was struggling to really get to know who everybody else was. Trying to understand, family connections and friend connections and relationships and all of those things. That was still really hard. And now, we're meeting in person again, and that's improved. We're getting to know people again. I've had to relearn names. But that's okay. And I just realized as we began to meet in person again that it was how much was really missing from the dynamic of church. Now that's even kind of a mixed statement as we kind of think about the future of church. What's this going to continue to look like moving forward? What are the kind of programming that are we going to be able to do? How are we going to be able to operate church? I don't think that it's something that we're going to be returning to like what we've traditionally known. I think that those type of things are kind of going away. And so, in ministering and trying to pastor a church, what does the church look like moving forward? And listening to a lot of podcasts and reading a lot of articles about the future of the church, this online dynamic of what it will bring and how the church can be responding to that online demand. It's been exciting, in a lot of ways, seeing the church grow in an online way, engaging with people that I have not met, who are catching our services, people that have been connected to the church at one time and then have stepped away for whatever reason and for whatever period of time. And so seeing them come to online church, that's exciting and that's good. And so thinking about all of these things, thinking about where we as the church have been over the last few months, the struggles, the victories, anticipating and trying to understand what's ahead, and then wrestling with this passage that Paul wrote in his letter to this church, and having this overwhelming sense of urgency, this struggling in his heart and in his spirit to advance the gospel, to see. I love how he says this here in verse 2, that they may have the full riches of complete understanding, in order that they may know the mystery of God. And that's the call of the church, right? That's a call of the church ultimately, is to make these mysteries of Christ known. And that needs to come from a sense of urgency in my heart and in the hearts of others. And so as a pastor, trying to communicate that, trying to have that for myself, but also being able to encourage those in this church to have that same desire, that same passion. So this is, again, it's just been an interesting time. And as I've, again, kind of talked about this struggle that I've had as far as not having that urgency burning within me, and then this reminder, from Paul to really have a different focus. And Paul had a different focus. He had a different perspective. And so as the church moves forward in this time of pandemic, we need to be willing to look at things differently. We need to be willing to advance the gospel in whatever means necessary. And this is going to be, I think, a hard and difficult time for the church. I think it's going to be something that we're going to kind of wrestle with in a lot of ways, trying to step into a new identity. The people of God have this desire within them for fellowship and for community. And that's good. And we need to have that. But what does this look like, having this online dynamic within it? How do we navigate that? How do we bring in this online presence and being able to connect people that are in this online community to a physical in-person community? Man, that's going to be a hard thing to integrate. And so those are things I'm thinking about and trying to pray through, and, inviting the church board in this process as well. How do we do that? How do we have an online presence, and how do we have this in-person presence? How do we worship together in those ways? Developing online small groups maybe that mix with physical small groups. I mean, I don't know. And we're just really thinking through those things and dreaming big dreams and rethinking church in a lot of ways. So as a new pastor, really trying to think through those things and trying to lead well. When I was interviewing for this position, and when I was invited to come and be the pastor here, my district superintendent told me a couple of things. He said, during your first year, dust the furniture. And during your second year, you can move the furniture. And what he was communicating was that, the first year, it's good to just develop relationships. It's good to just get to know people and not maintain a status quo so much. That wasn't the heart of what he was saying, but investing in the right things, getting to know the church, the community, the people. Then during the second year, you have a better understanding of who the people are, who the community is, who the church is, and being able to help move the church to better address those needs. What COVID did was totally upset that timeline. COVID has given us the opportunity to really reevaluate everything that the church has been doing, every ministry that we have been doing, reevaluating and how we do our Sunday morning worship services. As we look at reopening more of our church, looking at Sunday school and, wrestling with what does that look like going forward? Has what we've been doing working? Is there things that we can do to improve? Is there things that we can do to change things, to make it more effective? So everything from adult ministries to nursery and Sunday school and children's church and youth group and all of these things that we've done as a church, COVID has given us permission to really reevaluate all of this moving forward, with the opportunity to change these things, because I don't see us going back to the way things just have always been, and I don't get a sense from my church and my community that's what they're clinging to. I think just in the way that conversations have gone, to the way that people, I feel like, have been trying to urge me to move forward, is that we're ready for where God is wanting to lead us, and that's exciting. And so I think that there's some very exciting things coming up, and it's a time that as a church body we need to be coming together and praying and really seeking the Lord in what He has for us. Where does our church fit in this overall picture? How can we impact the community in which we live? And man, all of these things are just a lot to process. And so I feel like sometimes the enormity of these issues, the enormity of what's happening and how things are constantly changing with COVID, kind of wears on you too a little bit. It wears on my spirit and my anxiety, not my anxiety. That's not what I want to say. It wears on my spirit, and it wears on my perspective of where things are. And I think that's kind of played into, I don't know, that struggle that I've had to see things happen and desire to do things, but at the same time feeling unmotivated, just because sometimes things are just so big. There's so much to do that it's hard to get started. It's hard to even figure out where to start and all of that. And so what tends to happen is you don't. And I feel like that's kind of where I've been, is that there's so much that needs to be done, so much that's before us, so much that God, I think, wants to do and is getting ready to do, that it's so hard to figure out where to start, or even, because of the size of it, even getting ready to start, if that makes sense. It makes sense in my head. Hopefully, as I've tried to explain that makes sense to you. But that's just kind of where I found myself here over the last few weeks. And I think what I want to blame for the reason why I haven't kept up with this podcast the way that I've wanted to. And I've had ideas and things I've wanted to talk about, but just finding time. No, that's not the right word. Not finding time, making time, and myself processing through all of these things, where I'm understanding God's going. So yeah, it's been a long time, and I'm looking forward to kind of regularly spend time doing this. It's been my intent when I first started this on Mondays, just to, not have some great big long podcast episode, so much as being able to process things in my own heart and mind and ministry that are happening. And I do intend to continue to interview others that are in similar contexts, to see what I can learn and understand from them, to be challenged, to grow, to not be stagnant. And that's the challenge I got from Paul in his letter to the Colossian church. He said it, that he had this sense of urgency within him to be advancing the gospel. And that is the prayer that I've in turn been praying, that God would stir those same things within me, to have that same sense of urgency, to be struggling, to be laboring for the advancement of the gospel. And I think too often it's easy to stay comfortable. Comfortable feels good, but that's not where God desires us to be. He wants to stretch us. He wants to pull us out of what's familiar, to keep us relying on Him, to allow Him to continue to mold and shape us into who He wants us to be. So kind of a lot of things been happening. That's just been in my own heart and mind. Uh, as far as life, it's again just the testimony of God's goodness and faithfulness to us. What COVID has also done is allowed my wife and family to move up here to Ray a lot sooner than what we had first planned. With the way that schools closed down and went to pure online, it allowed us to be able to the girls to finish school remotely, which was good. Now, being in school online, I think wasn't the best, but man, they did great in working through that. My wife was able to work online for the last several weeks and months of her time there at her job, and then in the process was also able to find a new job here where we now live, and that was again a testimony to just God's hand on what He was doing in her life. And so she was able to find and accepted a position here at the school. She's going to be teaching fourth grade, and she is excited about it, but nervous, just like many other teachers, not knowing fully what to expect during this time, not knowing if it's going to be online or in person or a mix of the two, or being ready to just move to an online presence if cases spike, those type of things. So I know that those have been hard for her to process through, but she's just been diligent in getting ready and praying for students that she's going to be teaching over this next year. And we know, just as God's proven Himself faithful in every step of the way, that His hand is here as well in this part of the process. So that was definitely a great answer to prayer for us. Also, Megan, so I've got one in college, and that's Grace, and then Megan, she finished her senior year this year and had a graduation here at the beginning of August. And that was something that was just really good for her. It provided some closure a little bit to that school year. I mean, this was a hard way to finish out a senior year. And I know she was heartbroken about many things that didn't happen. As I think back over my senior year and things I looked forward to and participated in, similar things for her as well, and those things were taken from her, bit by bit, and that was heartbreaking for her to deal with. Senior trips and those type of things, traditional graduation, but they were able to have a graduation. It was, limited in the amount of people that could gather. It was outside, and just a lot of things that were different. But nonetheless, we were able to celebrate just this accomplishment that she had made and milestone that she had achieved, and it was good. It was good to celebrate that, and she enjoyed it. I know she did. And now, I've last week I took Grace to college, and this coming weekend, Megan, I'll be taking her to college for her freshman year, and all of the things that come with that. It's just been an interesting year. A lot of heartbreaks in some ways, but some exciting new things before us. And it's hard wrestling with what you are used to or what you envision things to look like moving forward, and all of that's out the window. All of that has changed, and so trying to encourage my kids and what's before them, teaching them to be flexible and to allow God to work despite the frustrations that they may currently find themselves in and are dealing with. My youngest two kids, so Emily will be a senior this year, and so she's going into a new school in her senior year. And man, I'm just so impressed with the way that she has, the way that she has looked at this, the way that she has decided to have this good attitude moving into this. and Lauren, has really moved along in the way that she has gone from absolutely hating and not wanting to start a new year to accepting it, and in some ways excited about what's before her, making some new friends, with both of them. And so, if you think about it, if you could be praying for my kids as they continue a transition, in ways that I wasn't thinking about, in a lot of ways. So a lot of things before us. A lot's been happening over the last few months, and a lot still before us. And we're excited about it. We're looking forward to what God wants to continue to do. I don't know what else to really talk about at this time. There's been kind of a lot of things I've gone over. God's still up to some amazing things, and I'm excited for what's before us. Appreciate those that have been praying for us through this transition, praying for my kids, praying for my wife. God has continued to prove himself faithful time and time again. And I know that there will be times down the road when probably be questioning what God is doing and why he's brought us here. And I know that I'll need to remember what's been happening during this time to be fully convinced of what he's been doing in seeing his purposes brought forth in my life and in my family's life. God is good. God is so good. And I'm excited for what's before us. I'm excited for the future of the church. I'm excited for ministry. I'm excited for all of these things that are coming our way. Thanks once again for listening. Thanks once again for joining me on this crazy journey that I found myself in. Thanks for listening to my ramblings. But hopefully, my prayer is that you're encouraged too. That through the process that I found myself in some ways that maybe you're finding yourself in similar situations, times and seasons of change. And I pray that you find ways to embrace that moving forward. I love you. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you soon.